Ferguson Police Department. Those findings fueling lots of reaction. Joining us now with his take, outspoken Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke. Welcome. Great to have you back on the program. As I understand it, you feel that the Civil Rights Division report on Ferguson, which determined that the police routinely violated the civil rights of blacks, is what you describe as empty rhetoric by the Attorney General, and it's fueling hatred against police, not just in Ferguson, but across different cities in America. Why?
Well, this assault on the American police officer continues. I predicted this early on with some of the irresponsible rhetoric coming out of the mouths of President Obama and Attorney General Eric Holder and Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York City. I think this report that was put out, this junk report, I might add, just added more fuel to a smoldering fire. I've done graduate level work and research, and if I would have handed in a report like that, I would have expected my professor to put a big fat red F across the page, throw it back at me and say, go back and do some quality work. Eric Holder had an agenda. He did not go into this with an open mind, this investigation report. He wrote the conclusion first and then sent his people out to go find misapplied data, misappropriate rules of statistics to validate his conclusion. And I think it was irresponsible. You know, when you have a city that's predominantly black, or, you know, nearly 70%, 60%, of course most of the interactions with the citizens there are going to be with black individuals. And he cherry-picks two emails, disgusting emails, I might add. But we also found those at Sony Pictures, some off-color banter going back and forth about the President of the United States, very distasteful. But we didn't indict the entire motion picture industry over a couple of emails. I'm tired of these two-bit politicians and bureaucrats taking all the pathologies and maladies of the American ghetto and laying them at the feet of the American police officer.
So why do you think this is being fueled at a time when emotions are still running high in Ferguson, particularly in light of the officers who were shot earlier this week? You say there is an agenda. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Well, you know, Eric Holder has a chip on his shoulders, and some of the in the days following the Ferguson police shooting, he kind of intimated that the grand jury would come back with a finding of that Darren Wilson acted improperly, which he did. The grand jury got it right. You know, the President of the United States said in an interview that he thought this racial discord going on in the United States was healthy for America, and I found that ridiculous. And he also said that our law enforcement officers were poorly trained and that they had a fear of people that don't look like them, and I thought that was disgusting as well. He puts together this task force, this knee-jerk reaction, a task force to transform, he said. He was going to transform American policing. They put out this report several weeks ago, and again, that report was ridiculous. It didn't include on the panel or on the task force. He didn't put any sheriffs, elected sheriffs on that task force. He didn't put any representatives from victims groups. Okay, so it was a very one-sided report, and all it talked about was what the police need to do. And instead, he should have had a more open-minded view and also talked about, because it's a two-way street, as you know, what the community. He could have reminded our young black males in these urban ghettos to not fight the police, not resist arrest, not try to disarm the police, and not try to engage them in foot pursuits, because they have an obligation, and he should have put this in there. They have an obligation to comply with the law enforcement officers' lawful commands.
Now, you really feel that the leaders are not doing enough to send that message out. And the fact that the report exonerated Officer Darrell Wilson, and still that part of the story wasn't played up by the President or the Attorney General. This, after that incident, dominated headlines for weeks about whether the officer acted recklessly against an innocent teen.
Sure, and it's pretty obvious to me that in sports they call it a make-up call. When a ref blows one call, he tries to make it up later on. After the grand jury came out, and then he knew, Eric Holder knew that there would be no civil rights violations, a very high standard, and he knew some of the facts because he was down there early on, and his Department of Justice was involved in the investigation early on, but he kind of gave this hint to the community that he was going to make it right. And so when he had to put out this report that there were no civil rights violations, he glossed over that, and that's why I said this was nothing more than a make-up call.
Really quickly, just a couple of seconds I have left, the impact this is having on law enforcement. You speak with a lot of people out there, even, you know, amongst your colleagues, and to others across the country. How is this being received, this news?
Well, it's unfathomable that at this period in time in 2015 that we'd be taking on live fire in our communities. This isn't the only place it happened. It happened in L.A. It happened in San Francisco. It recently happened in Fulton County, Georgia, where an officer, a detective, Terrence Green, was shot and killed responding to a call for service. So, you know, we already live in a hyper-vigilant state anyway, but now we have to turn up even more, and that's not good for anybody.
Sheriff Clarke, thanks so much for joining us with your insights today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Uma.